Warning, the following podcast is brought to you by dads who are still wondering what's in the mystery jar in the fridge. Welcome to the All Pro Dad Podcast.
Hey, welcome to the All Pro Dad Podcast. I'm Ted Lowe, dad of 4. Today, I'm joined by my buddies, Mr. BJ Foster, father of 2.
Hey there, Ted.
Hey there, BJ. And Bobby Lewis, father of 3.
Correct. How you doing, Ted?
I'm good, guys. Good to be with you today.
Guys, I don't know if you knew this, but millennials are the best generation. It is proven by science. And because I'm one of them, I attest that the science is correct. But we're talking about a different generation today. We're talking about the generation of my kids. I have 3 kids who are Gen Alpha. Do you guys know when Gen Alpha was born?
2010. Or no, when they were born? Yeah, 2011, 2010, 2011, somewhere.
Correct. But they were born between 2010 and 2024. They are largely the children of millennials, as we said, the greatest generation. And the most diverse generation in U.S. history is Gen Alpha. One of the big differences between Gen Z, which is the generation that came right before Gen Alpha, is the emergence of AI. So you may have heard of Gen Alpha as the AI generation. Gen Z, it was the smartphone. Those technological advancements are just exploding in the lifetime of Gen Alpha. And interesting stat here, 58% of Gen Alpha kids have a smartphone before the age of, can you guess?
47.
Yeah, well, yeah. Before the age of
9.
10.
Oh, okay.
10 years
58% of Gen Alpha kids have smartphones before the age of 10, which is wild. And like I said, I've got 3 kids who are all Gen Alpha. The biggest thing I've noticed with them and a lot of their friends is they know way more about the world at their age than I knew when I was their age, if that makes sense. I was worried about Be Kind, Rewind, get that tape back to Blockbuster on time. And they're like, hey, ChatGPT, make me a picture of whatever, and it spits it out in 5 seconds. And life is just different for this generation of kids. And that presents some problems for us as dads, because we need to be able to relate to these kids, and we need to be able to relate to them in the way that they're absorbing the world, which is very much technology based. Might sound positive. Sometimes it can be a bit of a negative. So that's what we're talking about today. Our big question of the week is, what challenges are Generation Alpha facing, and what do we need to do as dads to help them?
Oh, you guys, when we were researching this, and just over the last few years as we've been diving into this, wow, it's a lot, right? Like, we should have huge empathy for Generation Alpha, because, as my grandmother says, bless their hearts.
Bless their hearts.
Bless their hearts. It's a lot of stuff. One thing that's a challenge for them is they have few coping skills. And I've watched this happen with my own kids. They know more about mental health than other generation. However, they have no skills of how to cope with anxiety and depression and the obstacles and just the general, dis-ease of it. I watch my daughter, who self-diagnosed herself with anxiety, and to her, based on what she saw on social media. So in her defense, she was right. But here's what happens. With awareness came surrender. It was like, well, I just have anxiety. I can't do anything about this. So social media, it's showing them anxiety. It's showing them depression. It's also showing them things like cutting. And so it's showing them these things, but it's not giving them the coping skills that go along with this. So they're more exposed than ever, but they have less skills than ever.
Yeah, I see that all the time. And it's the amount of self-diagnosis is pretty amazing. One of the things that I've sort of seen with Generation Alpha is they seem to just have fully embraced the whole idea of subjective truth, like the philosophy behind that. There's no absolute truth. One of the things that Generation Alpha, I think, craves more than anything else is authenticity, which is part of the reason why, like a lot of people kind of think, oh, AI, they're gonna cheat, but really, we haven't really. Teachers really aren't seeing that, and I think it's because this generation craves authenticity. So the problem with that is when they see our government, our private institutions, sometimes religious organization, churches in particular, it's a big betrayal when they sort of disregard the truth, or lack integrity. I see a lot of this of just the whole goal is to beat whatever the political opponent is. And if we have to be liberal with the truth, then so be it. That's the greater good. The problem with that is, for a generation that really seeks authenticity, that's going to make them very skeptical about their ability to trust. And so therefore they don't trust the systems that are set up to provide security, and kind of a foundation for them. They can no longer trust in them. So they can only trust in their own perspective or their own point of view. Yeah. And when that happens, there's a cost to it.
So are you saying, BJ, that they're deciding what they believe is true? Like, this is what's true.
This is what's true. I can trust myself. I can trust my own observations, and I can trust my own perspective, but I can't trust other people because they have an agenda, and I can't trust that. Yeah. And so therefore I can only trust myself. And a lot of that is dependent upon their emotions and how they feel about stuff, and that changes. And it's, I heard one, there was one philosopher one time that put it this way: like, if you can imagine being at a stoplight, and all of a sudden you start to feel like you're moving backwards. But, so one of the first things that you do is you hit the brake, and then you start looking around for something really solid, whether it's a tree or, something that's not moving, in order to get your frame of reference, in order to kind of go, okay, no, I'm not moving. It's just the car in front of me. It's the cars around me that are moving. So I'm in a solid position. Well, if you're just trusting yourself, and everybody's just trusting themselves and nothing else to rely on, well, imagine if there's no stationary subject. So there's no ultimate source for them anymore to really find out what the truth is. Everything is moving.
So my son was born in 2015. He's squarely right in the middle of Gen Alpha. He's not the youngest. He's not the oldest. We were sitting at a red light, and we were getting ready to go to hockey practice, and he asked me a question, and it was a pretty deep question about the truth of the world. And I said, well, okay, we've only got 4 minutes until hockey practice. I don't know how I'm going to answer this in 4 minutes. But in the moment, I was like, I got to give him something, because I can't just leave this hanging. So I looked out the window at the red light, and there was grass over next to us. And I said, well, buddy, what color is the grass? And he said, it's green. And I said, well, what if I told you that it was orange? And he kind of was like taken aback. He goes, well, it's green. I was like, you're correct, it's green. But what if for your entire life, your best friend next door told you it was orange? And every day he called you crazy because you said it was green. And he kept telling you it's orange, it's orange, it's orange. I said, who's right? And he said, well, I'm right because it's green. I was like, you're correct. But there's going to be a lot of people in the world telling you that grass is orange. And you need to understand why it's green, why you believe it to be green. Who do you trust in the world to tell you the truth that the grass is green? And you live on that, because it's very hard for kids to not just be told the grass is orange, but it's orange, it's also clear, it's also fuzzy, and it's also made of water. Like they're getting all this nonsense in their head all the time. And I do feel badly for kids who are dealing with that sort of constant pushback left and right to figure out what actually is true. Subjective truth is a huge hurdle that Gen Alpha is going to have to overcome.
It's a pretty good 4-minute discussion before hockey practice, Bobby. That's
good. Take your window, right, Bobby?
Yeah, it was pretty great. I felt, well, what can I use around me? Grass. And then we pulled in the parking lot, and he totally forgot about it. We talked about Skittles or something after the practice. He moved on,
Bobby, how old is he?
He's just turned 10.
He doesn't have more than a 4-minute attention span anyway. We need to always remember we're about to go into hockey.
Yeah.
We're going to have a hockey conversations. That would be a good limiting
I'm sure
factor.
He's already forgotten about that conversation.
Yeah, he could sing 4 TikToks in that amount of time. So
That's right.
That's good.
So here's another thing I think about Generation Alpha is it's the increasingly complex world that they're dealing with. I can't remember if it was you, Bobby, or you, Ted, that kind of said like they have more information than ever. They have more information about diverse cultures, beliefs, sexuality than we ever had. It seems like everything is on a spectrum these days, like everything, whether it's behavior, sexuality, right and wrong. It's like everything seems to be on some kind of, so there's so much out there for them. And I do think that the upside to this is I do think that this is more conducive to them trying to understand and having empathy for others. And that is a really great thing. If there's one area that I kind of feel like they're probably better at, than we are, is that they really try to have understanding for people of diverse cultures, and they really try to understand it and have empathy for it. The hard part about it is it leaves them vulnerable to process overload. Like there is just so much that they have to consider and understand. And there's so many areas where, particularly in a culture that's willing to shame and cancel, there's so much fear, I think, of saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. And that's probably why they seem to be staying in school longer. It's like, okay, this might be a safer place for us to just kind of talk through this or learn more before I actually say anything,
BJ, that's so important. And ironically, in the middle of all this different being exposed to the world, they're becoming more and more isolated. In fact, according to Springtide research, they tend to work individually rather than in groups and exhibit leadership behaviors rather than being collaborative. So there's less and less face-to-face interactions. And so they're just can be so isolated. And it breaks my heart that they're isolated with the globe, right? With all this other input. So I'm by myself, taking on the world by myself. And it's just something we need to have a lot of empathy for this generation.
I was just talking to BJ about this earlier, Ted, and I think we spoke about it yesterday. There's a professor at Boston College, and she was, this was a couple years ago now, Carrie Cronin, I believe is her name, and she basically challenged her college students to date because she realized none of them knew how. And it just came up organically in one of her classes one day, and the topic of hookup culture had come up, and all of these college students are like, oh yeah, I have no idea how to go sit and have coffee with somebody, but we can absolutely go hook up in the bar bathroom for half an hour or whatever. And she's like, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, there's no true connection that's happening during hookup culture. You're not vulnerable in any way. You're just hanging out in the moment, and then you're gone. And they said it actually is very difficult to set aside all of these other distractions and to just sit and be and have conversations, because you have to be collaborative. You can't just isolate when you're dating. And so the professor's like, well, then here's the homework assignment. Go on a date and write a paper about it. And it became one of the most popular classes on campus. Kids were trying to get into her class, not just because it was the dating element, but because they'd been so isolated. They'd been separated in their own little pods, their own little worlds, that when they were forced through the homework assignment to collaborate, their interpersonal skills grew and their connections grew. They maybe didn't stay with the person they were dating with, but they made a friend, right? And so it was beneficial for them. I really thought that was an interesting, phenomenon that took place at Boston College, and it's still ongoing as far as I know to this day. But isolation is awful. It's awful for every human, but especially a young person. And Gen Alpha, obviously, they're square in the middle of that.
And I saw the documentary on that, Bobby, and what part of the assignment was for people to ask someone on a date without their phones, to set it up, to do it face to face. I want to invite you out on a date. And I saw they would interview the students, and they were terrified. Yeah. It was just so interesting. Like you said, hook up in a bar was less scary to them than asking someone out on a date without the phone. And it's not their fault. And we got to keep coming back to this, because it's the world that they're living in, and we've got to, as dads, help them navigate it. Right?
I was just about to say that, because that dovetails into the next challenge that I think we were going to discuss, is that these kids, these Gen Alpha kids, they're susceptible to the negative effect of screens, but I can't blame them for that. Because you think about like when the iPhone came out, I believe that was the first smartphone, 2007. And a couple of years later, 2010, social media starts coming out. Well, guess what year Gen Alpha was born? 2010. They don't know what it's like to live in a world without a screen in your pocket all the time. They just don't know. And I read an interesting statistic from the American Pediatric Association. This is from 2023. It says 87% of children exceed the daily screen time recommendation by the APA. Most American children spend 3 hours a day just watching television. That's rooted at their house. Now they got a television in their hand. Imagine how much screen time they're getting walking around and with their friends and the cafeteria and everything else. It leads to shortening attention spans for sure, but also brain rot, if you guys have heard that term before, addiction to technology, information overload. We talked about all this. Technology is absolutely ingrained into this generation. And that's not necessarily an evil. Technology by itself is not evil, but it does add way more to their life. They've got to navigate more than I ever had to, for sure.
Bobby, what is the recommended time if they're exceeding it? Do you know that?
I believe it's less than 2 hours a day is the recommended time. But it's such a tricky stat to track too, because when I went to school, guess what they gave us? They gave us a calculator and I had to put it away during tests because they're like, you're going to cheat using this calculator. You couldn't have your cell phone out because they thought you might text answers to your neighbor. So school looks totally different for Gen Alpha than it did years ago. Almost every kid in every school has access to some kind of screen and they're expected to use it. So how can we blame Gen Alpha for overdosing on technology when we're feeding it to them all the time? You know, it's hard. It's a really tough thing. But that leads us to, you know, the challenges are one thing, but that leads us to the next part of our discussion, which is how do we help them face the challenges? Because it does no good to say, good luck, kid, and just walk away. We've got to help Gen Alpha.
That would be easy, just to kind of say, go figure it out. I mean,
ask ChatGPT how to live, kid. Good luck. Kid.
Yeah, exactly. AI will tell you exactly what to do. I do think, oddly enough, that ironically enough, I think that's part of it is to give kids a little bit more freedom. They don't have the coping mechanisms, I think, because a lot of times we come in to save the day when they're kind of going through stuff. We try to do whatever we can to eliminate pain and to eliminate suffering and struggle, and then they don't have the coping mechanisms. And with that, self-confidence goes down, anxiety goes up. So I think we need to give them a little bit more freedom to kind of face challenges and overcome them, maybe even fail. Don't be so quick. I think we need to not be so quick to offer solutions. So let's ask some questions like, I'm struggling with this, or this teacher's doing that. Okay, well, what do you think you should do about that? And give them the chance to do it.
I did this just a month ago with my son. I told you a little bit about him earlier. One of his passions is hockey. We mentioned that, but he also loves knives. I don't know where he got this passion for pocket knives. And I don't carry a pocket knife with me. I've used a pocket knife once in the last year. He's got like 2 on him at all times. I don't know why. He carries these things around.
He's one of the outsiders, if you've ever seen that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what it is. He's got one at the ready always. But we actually had this opportunity to make our own pocket knife. We bought the kits from a wood store down the road, and we had some wood blanks that were given to us by his grandfather. And so he decided to take these wood blanks and make the handle for the pocket knife. But he was so concerned that it wasn't going to look nice. Because you go to the store and you look at these knives and they're perfect and they're level and they're even and they're uniform and they're polished and everything. And he looked at me and says, well, what do I do? Like it might not look good if I do this by myself. And I said, good, then you'll learn how not to make a knife. And I just walked away and I said, have fun. And so he did. He went out there in the garage for hours and he was sanding and he was shaping this thing. And you know what? It came in and it wasn't perfect. And I said, that's okay. The next one will be better. And then the third one will be better. And the fourth one will be better. But I gave him the freedom to just do it on his own. And he was so proud of this knife. He carries it around with him more proudly than all the other ones because, for one, Grandpa gave him the wood, but also it was his. Like, he did it. And if I had been out there standing over his shoulder and being like, nope, you're sanding it the wrong way. Nope, that's wrong. Don't use that grit. Then it would have been mostly me and just letting him do a little bit of it. That wouldn't have benefited him at all. So having that freedom, I think, is a huge thing to offer them, to prove to them that, hey, you can do stuff. You're just maybe not capable yet, but every skill you add, you're becoming more and more capable. So stack some skills,
I love that.
The second thing is we got to teach them that they can't just trust their own hearts in order to find out what the truth is. Bobby, like you were talking about the grass illustration. It's like, if a kid is colorblind, then they're going to see, a different color than what other people are. But that doesn't mean that that's the color of what it is. In fact, there's and we're going to feel stuff and think stuff that are the wrong, we're going to feel, it's not necessarily that feelings are bad, but sometimes we're given the wrong information. Mm-hmm. And so we can't always trust our own perspective and our own feelings on a subject. There's an Old Testament verse that talks about the heart is deceitful above all things. It's desperately sick. Who can understand it? And I think that hits the nail right on the head. So like we need a solid source for truth to rest upon. Otherwise, this anxiety thing, we're going to have anxiety if we don't find a solid source to find truth. For me, I can just tell you personally, for me, that's God, and whatever opposes God is something that I'm like, okay, well, this must be off, or this must be a lie, or, so I'd ask the dads out there, like, what's your source that you can pass? Ask your kids, what's a solid source of truth? Like, you can't distrust, you can like test everything, but don't dismiss opposing points of view or even just systems out there that may have taken liberty with the truth, or you can test them, test each thing that they bring by in order to see if it's true or not.
Is there any worse advice than follow your heart? And yet that seems to be the Gen Alpha motto.
Live your truth.
I mean?
Live your truth.
Yeah.
At what point in life is that a great idea? When they're toddlers? Have you seen a toddler? They live their truth and they poop in their pants. And, elementary, they're living it's their truth keeps changing. So,
I believe chocolate cake is the best dinner for me, so I'm going to eat it every night. Well, your truth is wrong, and you're going to go to the doctor. Like, we can't let kids live their truth every step of the way. It's not good for them.
Action step number 3 is set healthy boundaries around the amount of information that they take in. That's not tough, but we talk about that a lot with their phones, and they don't need more information, right? In fact, research is so clear that the less screen time our kids have, the more their behavior and overall countenance improves. And it's just taking a break from processing all this information. And a lot of times that information is not just the fun, silly water slide videos, right? It's deeper than that. And kids need breaks. And as dads, we got to help them to find those breaks, even if they push back. Another action step is help facilitate more face-to-face interactions. So important, so help kids with play dates, figure out a time for them to connect with other kids. We used to bribe kids at our house. We just kept snacks all the time. And so I don't know if our kids were popular or that we had Doritos. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I
don't know if you can make that distinction. I think they're both the same thing. If you got Doritos, you're going to be popular.
This face-to-face is a big deal for me, though. My daughter has her own cell phone now. It's not a super powered phone. It's kind of a dumb phone. But we kind of have slowly upgraded her over the years. And so she's able to text back and forth with some friends, which we know is good in a pinch. But I always say, hey, call your friends. It's better to call your friends.
That's good.
It's better than texting. But even better than that, FaceTime your friends. Because at least you're now getting eye-to-eye contact. And so we've actually encouraged FaceTime calls between her and her friends versus telephone calls, and definitely more so than texting. But I got to tell you, boys, this has come back to bite me in the butt today, because my wife sent me a text before we started recording. And you know what's happening right now? My teenage daughter is FaceTiming with the boy she met the other day. So this is terrible, terrible news. If you could say a prayer for me, that'd be great. But I have caused this problem, because she's having better communication face to face with this boy than she would have had I never instituted this stupid rule. She could have just texted him and they would have been having lesser communication. I'm my own downfall right now. This is awful.
She's learning a lot.
I know.
Learning a lot.
I know. He's a safe boy, but still, I'm not having a good day. I do think there is something to say about screen time, though, because it's part of their life. And we've mentioned screen time earlier, but we need, as dads, to set some boundaries on that. And they need to be pretty rigid boundaries. If we're setting porous boundaries and they're kind of loose and you're bending them, often, then that's not really setting a good message for your kids. But if you're setting some boundaries around the screen time, that's healthy for your kids.
If your Gen Alpha kid is struggling with screens, we're going to put this episode, it's episode number 44 with Joey Odom, he gives great suggestions for parents, but we'll put that episode link in the show notes. And he says, just really quickly, and he unpacks all these, to spend an hour apart from your phone daily. Number 2 is to establish sacred times and sacred spaces in your home. And 3, search for opportunities for connection. I think one of the most powerful things we can do as dads, if we want them off their screens, and let's take them with us somewhere. Let's go throw a football. Let's go hang out with them. Let's play a game. Let's go do those things to hang out with them and take that time of, hey, we're not just telling you, don't do this. We're saying, let's go do something together.
Well, Gen Alpha is different in the respect that they're dealing with a different technological world than maybe their older cousins, younger siblings, whatever might have dealt with. But one thing's not different with Gen Alpha. They still crave time with you.
Absolutely.
They still want to spend time with mom and dad. They still want to connect with you. Not through a screen necessarily, but they want to have one-on-one quality time. So if you can do that, board games, go for walks, go to the park, fish at the lake, whatever you want to do, build that time in. They need that. They crave that. Gen Alpha needs it just like every other generation that came before them.
Yeah, because all those things are novel. Board games are novel to them. And novelty breeds connection. And so just, our kids are into
I believe the
board games
term
too.
is vintage, Ted. Vintage.
Vintage, yeah.
Yes.
Analog fun.
Analog fun.
I mean, I think before the stat in the beginning, about 10-year-olds and younger with phones, we just
58%. 58%.
We just throw these phones at our kids, and I want you to know, my son didn't get a phone until he was 15, and he was one of the last. In fact, I think he was the last in his class to get. He cried when he got it. He was that excited about it. And I was glad to give it to him because, there was a part of me that mourned, but there was another part of me that thought he needs to learn how to use this in my house. Another thing, you can't give them a phone when they're when they're heading off to college because you haven't had a chance to work with them. But we had my son sign a contract, and you can find a contract on imom.com. There are great cell phone contracts on there. And there were some things that, we just had the boundaries set up for him. There's a limited time he's able to use it. He's got to plug it in downstairs at 10 o'clock each night. We set up restrictions so it would shut off around that time. He couldn't get an app unless he asked us, until he requests it, and we have to give him, the approval of it. You can't expect them to go take a phone up into their rooms without anything bad happening, because there's all these things. I mean, pornography, sex, predators, online bullying, all of these things they're going to be faced with. And so, when you're dealing with screens, you've got to set up the structure around them. You got to give them the boundaries. And then, finally, if it's not a phone, you got to make them earn their time, make them earn the limited time, all schoolwork done, if it's just an hour a day or half an hour, make them earn it. They've got to do all these things. They got to clean up the kitchen or whatever before they do it. Make them earn it.
And they'll push back on that, but it's structure, and structure is good.
Of course they're going to push back on it. And too many parents are like, well, it makes them unhappy. It's like, well, good. That's a good thing. Then they can learn how to cope with their unhappiness.
Right. Well, we're basically saying trade something that's potentially harmful for them for something that's really good for them, and that's face-to-face interaction.
I do want to say this, that my wife has been great about trying to set up face-to-face interactions, or just even planning events where there aren't any screens. And there are other parents out there. If you desire this, you can find other parents that want to do the same thing. And we fortunately found people that want to do the same thing, that we want to set up opportunities for kids to be face-to-face and to have hangouts. And, whether it's just putting food out there so they're all hanging out at your house and we're not going to do screens, we're going to do a bunch of games. And it created a community, and we just all went on vacation together. And one of the coolest things that I saw is, you want to talk about, there were a bunch of kids playing chess against each other. There were a bunch of kids playing board games, card games, where there wasn't a phone in sight, and they have them. They all have them.
So just put a pile of Doritos in the front yard, and
Doritos make you popular.
Yeah. Whether it's, kids at your class, hey, we're going to have, if you have a birthday party, like set up a birthday party where you're going to lead them in games and make them fun. So we have a rule. One of the rules we gave our kids when they got their cell phone is if you are with other people, you do not take your cell phone out. And if all of your friends are on their cell phones, you still don't take it out. You try to get them off of their cell phone and talking to you. That's your goal. Setting up these structures, going after, trying to set up times where they can have more face-to-face. It will really pay off. It's hard work, but it'll pay off. I guarantee it.
That's a perfect segue, BJ. Thank you for saying that, to move into our pro move of the week. And that is, this week, pick one person in your kid's life. Maybe that's a cousin, a neighbor, or a friend. It helps set up one in-person hangout, just one, because face-to-face time matters more than you think. Yeah. You guys and listeners, I hope you feel very encouraged by this, because we know a lot of these episodes can get really heavy on stats. They can get really heavy on what our kids are facing. But we want you to leave with hope. And what we're basically saying is trade something complex for something simple, and that's relationship, and trying to help them have that with us, but also with people that we love and people that we trust. It's good for kids. Mm-hmm. Hey, you guys, thanks for hanging with me today. It's always fun. Hey, and listeners, if this podcast was helpful for you, can you take a minute to rate and review it? That's how other dads find out about our show. And if you have a question that you think we need to dive into, please leave that in the comments. We'd greatly appreciate that. And as always, we want to say thank you for listening. We know that you and your kids will be glad that you did.
Thanks again for listening to the All Pro Dad podcast. Behind every episode is our amazing team. Producer Haley Mawat, audio and video editor Buck Buchanan, and production coordinator Corey Walliff. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of the nonprofit Family First. Along with our motherhood program, iMom, we exist to help you love your family well. So remember, if you have more questions than answers, then you're probably in the right place. See you next time.